This is Lainey Cameron. I am here today with Pamela Skjolsvik, and her novel, Forever 51, actually just came out today. Congratulations, Pamela.
Thank you very much. It's very exciting.
And so this is a vampire story, but it is so dang funny. I'll actually admit that I peed my pants a little reading this book. It is so funny. It's that funny. Like, it is snarky. It's hysterical. The premise is that you've got a woman who was turned into a vampire 150 odd years ago in the 1800s when she's menopausal. She's 51 years old. And so she's dealing with hot flashes and sweaty boobs and all the stuff that comes with that, in addition to a blood addiction, because she's a vampire, so she's got to find her blood. I guess my first question is, where on earth did you get the idea for this from? Because it's inspired and original. So how the heck did you get there?
Okay, well, that's an interesting question. I never thought I'd be writing about vampires because I got my MFA in creative nonfiction, and I wrote my first book on death professions and like following hospice nurses around and writing with EMTs. So that kind of experience with that probably influenced this tale because Veronica, the main character, is a hospice nurse. She tries to be an ethical vampire and get her blood from a locally grown ethical source. So she helps people transition from life to death. They want it, so she's not going against them, their will. But actually, my son, it started with a conversation. My son was probably in 5th grade, and he said, "Mom, what do you think would happen if like a teenage vampire went to a tanning salon? You know, like they didn't want to look pasty." And I'm like, I don't know. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, not a teenage vampire, but a middle-aged woman going to a tanning salon, and what would happen because she kind of wants to fit in because she's so pasty because she hasn't seen the sun for so long.
And that's the opening chapter of the book, and I was laughing from that very first chapter.
Yeah.
So let's take a peek at a review because the book's already getting some fabulous reviews. I give it 5 stars myself. Full of vampires with spray tans and menopause trying to 12-step their way to salvation. A very funny, very bloody book about growing older and getting dead. And this is Grady Hendrix, which is a wonderful blurb to have. That book is doing very well right now, I think. So let me ask you about how the book changed. Is it different than the first version? You know, books tend to change as they get edited. What about this one?
Yes. The first version of the book had a much darker ending. Because I wanted it to just be a standalone book. I mean, it is a standalone book, but it can be continued now with the newer ending. And both my agent at the time and then ultimately the publisher that is publishing it, they didn't like the ending. They're like, we want it a little happier because it was pretty dark. So I changed the ending. And things that got edited away were probably, I love products, and I put a lot, I just, as a trained nonfiction writer, I really pay attention to what people are drinking, or if they smoke, what brand do they smoke, and I'll put that in. But then the editor was like, no, we got to take out all those brands, we don't want them to sue. So that had to get taken out. So.
Well, it worked very well. And I thought that Jenny, the kind of sidekick character, they end up going on a road trip together, and Jenny is human. She's not a vampire, but she is a drug addict, a meth addict. And I thought the relationship and the snarkiness back and forward between them made the book. It was very funny, and the dialogue was very, very well done.
Thank you. Yeah, Jenny was just going to be a one-shot character to make Veronica's trip on this flight just hellacious. But when I read it with my writers group, they loved it, and they're like, well, you should keep her, what a great, So then I gave her a blood condition, and
she's a great sidekick. And I also like that you put a lot of the vampire myths in question. I won't say which ones, but, there's so much mythology around vampires, whether it's, cross or holy water or garlic or daylight or all of these things. And I love that in this book, you actually throw some of those up in the air and they turn out not to be true at some point, which is pretty funny.
Yep. So she lived, I won't give it away, but that was her playbook, was the Hollywood playbook. Like, this is what's supposed to happen. I can't do these things. So that's how she lived her life. And then she dispelled some of those myths just by living.
Right. And I love your point at one point in the book that vampires aren't exactly in the business of being social and helping each other out. So
Yeah.
even though some of them know that it's not true, that some of these myths don't exist, they don't bother to go around telling the other vampires.
True. Yep.
So I do want to acknowledge this has been an incredibly difficult last few weeks for you, and just a ridiculous time to launch a book, because I'm so sorry that you lost your mom just
Yep.
2 weeks, less than 2 weeks ago, a week, not very long ago.
Yep.
And your article came out today, or just came out a few days ago in CNN. And wow, talk about a powerful article. I mean, wow, I can see, you're both a fiction and a nonfiction writer, because it's really powerful. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. Well, my first book was about death and death professions, and kind of my fear of death and grief. And so I lost my dad 2 years ago, and I felt like that was he had a pretty good death. And I was, I was able to be with him, and I was with him when he died. And, I was like, well, that, it was way different than I thought it was going to be. But with my mom's, getting the diagnosis of COVID and then going in the hospital, and because she had COVID, nobody was allowed to visit. And that was incredibly difficult. And I think that's probably the most difficult thing for anybody right now whose parent or sibling or loved one is in the hospital, is that you can't be with them. You can't see what they're going through. And then, when my mom died, it's like, we don't get the same rituals that we got before. We can't gather and eat casserole and talk about our loved ones and hug people, which I've discovered is really, I'm not a hugger, and anybody who knows me knows I'm not a hugger, but I need a hug right now. It's been really hard. It's just this isolation. So I had to write that article. It was a way of honoring my mother, and just expressing a little bit of the anger I felt at how the U.S. has handled this pandemic from the beginning. And I just feel like my mom shouldn't have died, along with the 228,000 others who have also died at this point.
Right.
So, yeah, it's, this is not how I wanted my launch to be. But it happened, and I am grieving, and I will be grieving for a long time. But I also wrote a book, and it's coming out, and it's out. And
I'll say that what I said in my review is, yeah, these are really weird, horrible times, but sometimes that's exactly when we need to escape. We need a book that's going to take us out of this current reality, which is pretty sucky right now. And so your book did that for me. Thank you. It actually gave me several hours of escapism from the crap that is our news and situation right now. So thank you for that gift.
I'm glad. Yeah.
So do you have any advice for other people who are writing, or who are either fiction or nonfiction, or who are trying to use writing as a way to get through this time? Even, like, what have you learned along the way in terms of writing advice?
Well, okay. I'm not going to, I could say, sit down and write every single day. That's like very popular advice. But I think, for the most part, if you have a story to tell, just do it, and don't stop. And, just get your words down on the paper and then share it with somebody. I know personally, I had to go to an MFA program to give me the validation to write. And really, I've always been a writer. I just had to feel like, I got an official title. But, if you want to tell a story, just do it. And my other advice was, go do stuff. I know it's more difficult to do stuff right now during a pandemic, but I think life experience definitely, you have to have something to pull from in order to write. Yeah, I wrote a vampire book. I'm not a vampire, but, I am a perimenopausal woman, and I know what it's like to become invisible as I've gotten older, and I have silver hair. It's like, so I use that, myth of being a vampire, and, but made it real somehow. with real world experience. So live your life, write. Don't let the feeling that you're not good enough or you're not really a writer stop you. Just do it and then share it. And read out loud. That's my other advice. When you write something, read it out loud to see if it sounds right.
I love that. Go live your life, and it will give you things to share and write about. And no one has given that advice yet in the 25 plus episodes that I've had.
Really?
So there you go. So anything else you want to say before we show readers how they can connect with you?
If you're not into vampire books and you just want to support, a debut author, request their book from your public library. I also work in a library, and I'm a librarian, and to me, that is the sign of success, is to see my book in a public library. It's not to see like a huge shelf at Barnes and Noble, but being in a library and having people on hold to read my book. I don't know. That to me is success. So
perfect. And if you want to find more information about Pamela's book, you can find it at PamelaSkjolsvik.com or Pamela Skjolsvik on Instagram. She has a great Instagram feed with lots of fun and interesting things on it as well. And it has been lovely to speak with you, and congratulations. And everybody, go get the book. It's out now. You can get it on your readers today.
Thank you. And thank you, Lainey, for hosting and pronouncing my name correctly. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Take care, Pamela.
All right. Bye.